So welcome to our webinar on digital systems for staff retention. My name is Ian Corrigan, and I am the Commercial Director here at CoolCare. I have with me Jonathan David, who's CEO and founder of FlexEarn, one of our integrated partners, and Neil Eastwood, spelt with an E, not an A. Sorry about his little flag there. CEO and founder of Care Friends, which is an employee referral app and system. So yeah, let's have a look at what we're going to talk about. So we've got an introduction. I'll talk about very quickly about who CoolCare are, who are FlexEarn, who are Care Friends. So we can kind of establish, what we are, where we're coming from in our sort of viewpoints. Market outlook and a workforce outlook. Some data from Skills for Care. From Skills from Care, and a more accurate, more timely update from Neil in relation to visa applications. And then we're going to look at some key factors from staff retention, which actually also from Skills for Care, and then just talk about the entire sort of landscape of tech that can support staff retention, and there are a lot of things in that. So I think it's not often sort of really mapped out, and Neil's done a great job of doing that. And I actually saw Neil do this in a presentation probably about 3 years ago, and the categories are all the same. Some of the players have changed, but the tech is growing, if anything, and there are lots of ways in which tech can really assist businesses in their staff retention. So let's have a look, and then we'll have a look a little bit more of a deeper dive into what FlexEarn does and how they go about helping their customers, and what Care Friends does and how they help their customers. Some closing remarks, and then off we go. So hopefully that sounds like a good plan, because if it isn't a good plan, I don't have another. So let's crack on. So who are CoolCare? So we are part of L&T Care Developments. L&T Care Developments build care homes. We have had within our group Ideal Care Homes, which was 48 care homes sold on to HC1. So we now talk to HC1 about Ideal Care Homes. We have it within the group Danforth Care Homes, so it's 28. Oyster, we've got also Adora's associated, and Halcyon was part of the group as well. So L&T build brand new care homes, about 2 every month, give or take. And then CoolCare is part of that brand, part of that overall picture about helping operators operate their care homes easier, more efficiently, and in a more profitable manner. We've been around for quite a while. We have an exceptionally good customer retention rate, and our customer growth keeps growing. We have 55,000 beds. That's approximately 12% of the UK care home market by beds. And yeah, 99.88% retention means that we must be doing something right. And that's CoolCare. Oops, wrong way. So who are FlexEarn? Jonathan.
Hello. So we've been around for about 6 years now. We were the second earned wage access provider in the UK. Just at the core of it, FlexEarn is basically an app which allows your employees to access a portion of what they've earned in advance of their scheduled salary day, and they can do that in real time. We get repaid by the company as a salary deduction. So that's basically what we do. We just charge £1.75 per transaction. It's very much a employee well-being app, so it helps them with their financial well-being. We're partnered with Step Change, which is the UK's largest debt charity. You can speak to a Step Change debt advisor through our app. So we're fully integrated. We're integrated with CoolCare, so we pull in shifts through CoolCare. But I'll go into more detail later. That's a brief intro, and I'll show you why companies that offer services like FlexEarn can reduce staff turnover by around 80%. But over to Neil, or Nail.
Sorry, I didn't respond to the word Neil at all, Jonathan, until you said that. Thank you for triggering that. Yeah, hi everyone. So Care Friends, if you're not aware, is its sole purpose really is to maximize the number of employee referrals. I was writing a book called Saving Social Care it came out in 2017, but I was writing it in 2016, and I found that employee referrals were by far the best source of staff, highest quality and longest staying. And so Care Friends was created in order to try and maximize that and remove the friction that I saw in employee referral scheme. So torn poster on the care home wall, no one really getting involved. And the app, as you can see on the screen, has kind of points and a money bag, and it's got loads of gamification and that kind of thing. So the objective here is to pull in as many people from the local community as we possibly can do, who have the right values, because your staff have picked them and they stay longer, so that improves staff retention. Temporary agency staff sort of comes down and so on. So that's the objective, and you can give bonus points as well. So it's very much about sourcing the right people for care and relying on the workforce to know best.
Yeah, I was describing this to somebody just the other day, and I sort of said it kind of helps you get quality as opposed to quantity, which is I think especially considering the levels of turnover of new hires, it's such an important factor. Excellent. So quick outlook from myself, and this is kind of for an L&T view. So we know that there's an aging population. The demographic is of the baby boomer generation is on its way. We know that that's going to be sort of hitting the care homes shortly, if not already hitting them now. Life expectancy is increasing, especially in relation to females over males. Length of residencies are extending across the care home sector, so the amount of time that residents are with you is for longer. And then there's a continuing reducing capacity of care homes. Approximately 16 are closed in 2021. It's actually quite difficult to get data on that, but I can definitely see that they are closing down, and they continue to close down or need refurbishment and are sort of out of play for a period of time. Interestingly, the economies of scale doesn't really work that well in the care home market, as you know, the larger the groups are, they don't necessarily get economies, because care is care. You have to have good quality employees. You still have to have person-centered care. There are sort of losses in relation to efficiencies, because you have to have head offices covering multiple homes and multiple locations. So there's not necessarily the economy of scale, and that's why we have seen an increase in the amount of homes in the 1,000 to 4,000 bed size. So they make up 47% of the market. So effectively, kind of customers that CoolCare, are looking for, and customers that CoolCare would be suitable for, and then 100% suitable for Neil's product and Jonathan's product. So looking at the state of play in adult social care. So this is Skills for Care. They do a fantastic overview of England. I was looking to try and do an overview of the entirety of UK, because our products are all UK wide. Unfortunately, I realized it was going to take more time than just using this as a great example. Interestingly, staff turnover rate is not really moved that much. So the 22-23 figures is 28.3%. That's down from 28.9%, and is down from previous years. But actually, from my perspective, I look at that, it's pretty much a third, and it stays at a third, give or take, and it has been for a long time. So this doesn't seem to be moving very much. And yeah, so I think that's really what we're looking at, is that staff turnover. It's around about 30%, give or take. And obviously, with a data set for this, some organizations do better and worse than others in retaining their staff. And yeah, that's what we're talking about here. Is there a way in which some simple top tips and systems can be used to influence that figure? Neil, you've got more up-to-date information on that, so let's have a talk about these visa applications.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. So many of you on the call will have been involved in bringing international recruits over on a certificate of sponsorship. And this has been a big deal. And you can see there's rather a lot going on this chart. And I want to thank Charles Armitage at Florence for actually spotting this first of all when it was released, faster than I did. But it tells a really interesting story. So the two lines to look at are the upper two lines, the sort of purple, strong purple, rather than the pale ones at the bottom are just general recruitment of certificate of sponsorship outside of the care sector. And I think what we're looking at here is the mountain range of the full block purple line, which is the actual applications from the workers themselves. And then the hatched one is dependents. And as you'll all know, is that dependents are being stopped. So if your eye goes to the right there, that at that very moment, what we should see next is that hatched line dropping to nothing because dependents are no longer allowed. If you go back to the other side of the graph, back in the sort of early 2022, there's a hatched line saying that's when care workers were put on the shortage occupation list. Prior to that would be mostly nurse traffic. And so the nurse traffic is our baseline, if you like. And so we can assume most of the increase, not all, above that will have been driven by the independent social care sector. And I think you can see there's a peak, obviously, around August last year. And then a sudden drop, and this is me surmising what happened. I think is that politicians were made aware of this number now more than pre-Brexit, and of course that was horrifying to certain parts of the Conservative Party, and so there was action taken immediately outside of the announcement of dependents, which was a couple of months later in November that dependents were going. I think the Home Office, this is again my speculation, slowed down or made it put more controls in place to make it harder to get visas anyway. And so we see this line dropping far faster than you might expect, and around the announcement time. So the question for all of us is where that dark purple line is going to end up. It's heading to, what's the word from my maths lesson, asymptotically go parallel to zero at some point soon. So I think this, if you take a step back, there's a human story behind all of this, of course, terrible stories of what's been happening to the workers themselves. And now there's a lot of panic about trying to get sponsorships and stay and all that kind of stuff. So there's a big human story behind this. But in terms of supply into the market, what we're seeing is those workers that were typically doing double the hours of someone born in the UK are now dropping. So we've gone from feast to famine with this. And I think this is really good a point, because it's really making us focus on retention. How do we keep those people? And obviously, if they're on a visa, hopefully that will help their retention with you. But also, where do we find people now who are going to stay a long time? And what tools can we use to give our workforce benefits that are going to support us, because we can't compete with pay? I think that's a kind of summary of that slide.
That's a really good summary. It's very interesting, especially if you click to the previous one. It's like, oh, okay, right, this is what's going on, and then no, this is what's happened in more recent point in time. I caught up with one of the senior data analysts at one of the large groups that we're in conversation with, and he referred to it as a leaking bucket, and he's tough of a group, and so it's sort of slightly dehumanizing this sort of situation, but there's almost an accepted loss of staff. It's a number that is built in, so you're going to lose it. And he was referring to the need to keep filling the bucket because the bucket keeps leaking. But then effectively what you're saying here is that at least one of the avenues of filling said bucket is completely dried up. It's not going to be something that's going to be possible unless there's a policy change, which there could be. Let's statistically, but coulda, woulda, shoulda. You never know in the grand scheme of things. So very interesting. So let's just talk about a little details. So what are the key factors in staff retention? So this is literally from Skills for Care. And again, I do like Skills for Care because they spend all their time looking to try and influence the 28.9% figure that was on the front page. So it's all about, how do we do that? We create a positive work culture, make it a nice place to work. That's important, and that's not really something that systems can really make a big difference on, but it's very much about the manager. And I know that one of the key reasons that staff leave a company is their interaction with managers and management. That's the number one reason they leave. The second reason they leave is because they are they want to move because of location. So location is not suitable anymore. And the third reason they leave is pay. So the manager is such a huge influencing factor. So, and good leadership and management is very important. CoolCare, we feel that being able to give managers time to manage rather than do admin is very important. An inclusive and an effective workforce planning. So again, people don't like being messed around on their shifts. It can make life very difficult. Again, that's fully enough CoolCare's in there as well. But embedding commissioning practices that support staff retention, so making it part of how you bring staff in is how you keep them. Recruitment practices and retain staff for the long term. That's very important. Again, back to that data analyst, he was saying that they were losing over 40% very soon after having recruited them. So he would go through all his recruitment process and 40% would be gone within about a month, which is an area that they are addressing, of course, but it's important. Promoting career development, that's very much upskills for carers avenue, and I think that's an important part of everybody's lives, is sort of long term. Offering positive benefits and terms and conditions. This is where we're talking about with Neil. Promoting staff wellbeing, that's something that Jonathan can definitely sort of speak to, and then appropriate awards and recognitions, a bit of both on there as well. So yeah, these are just straight off skills for carers, things to do. And we've got tech that can assist, and Neil's going to talk us through the different sort of categories of tech, because there is a lot of options, and see how we can potentially tick these boxes off using systems to make our lives easier.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. And I would say this is obviously not necessarily a full set of categories, and definitely not a full set of logos. And there's a lot happening in the tech sector. And there are some players who are making a sort of generic offer, horizontal offer to any organization. And then social care happens to be a category. And maybe FlexZone's a good example of that, where there are many categories that could benefit. But I think it's particularly compelling, Jonathan's offer in social care. And then there are other categories or other players that are very focused on this market. CoolCare being a great example, and Care Friends, because of its logo name, being another great example. And I've just picked these sort of 6 categories and wanted to sort of give you a little bit about how I see tech helping in various ways. And there are many other logos. These are just examples. But in terms of staff communication, this is one of the really critical ones, that there has been very poor communication tools. And often, I think actually COVID forced providers to update their contact details with staff because they needed a more meaningful dialogue with them on an urgent basis. And I think that has kind of swept out the stable a little bit in terms of staff comms, and made people realize they need to use tools that are both one-way and two-way communication tools that mean staff know what's going on. And there's an increasing expectation that they should know what's going on. And I think this is a generational thing where expectations are changing faster sometimes than employers can keep up. And certainly in social care, we see that with examples like rostering and shift tools and picking up shifts and all sorts of things like that. But in terms of staff comms, Ian, I don't know if you want to talk to CoolCare's role in that.
I didn't want to sort of do too much of a product push, but so CoolCare has unlimited free text messaging built into it, so you can message about shifts. So you can click on the shift and it would send out a message to whoever you want saying, would you like to do the shift? And also you can message about absolutely anything. Text messages, I was once challenged by a gentleman who was a CEO of companies. Why text messages? This is boring. It's old school. Why not have an app? It's like, because your staff don't necessarily want an app for staff comms. They don't want you listening in on them, and those you get pushback. You can always get a text message. You don't need Wi-Fi. You don't need data. You don't even need credit. So you can always get the message. Apps are brilliant. Not all demographics within a care home are really into smartphones. Yes, they probably do use them, and but they might say they don't. So I think we've gone for the lowest possible common denominator, which is text messaging. Yeah, it is all technology, and yeah, it does cost us, but it means that everybody can get asked, everybody can be communicated in, and we believe that that's a good thing. Yeah, an observation on WhatsApp, actually, just as an aside, I popped that in there. It's not something that I think you would normally consider as an ideal choice, but we meet a lot of customers that use WhatsApp, and I got fed back by a HR manager once. She said, yeah, we stopped using WhatsApp because we put out on our group WhatsApp about mental health things being available, from HR, and we've got a new service offering. And somebody responded to it and said, yeah, I'm actually having a lot of trouble because my wife's left me and I really do need some support. And that was to the entire company. So WhatsApp is okay, but it's free, but it's not necessarily a great tool for actual accurate staff comms. So it's not all tools are made the same.
No, I would agree, and it's definitely a Marmite app. When I talk to providers, some love it, others regret it. So it's very interesting. And some of the others on there, the Blinks and the staff bases have a bit more sophistication in terms of the sort of message from the CEO, and you can do other things in the app. So employee apps is a really emerging market. And the second one, well-being, is a broad church, and I've split it, hence the little line there, between financial well-being and mental health well-being. And I'll just talk a little bit about mental health, and then I guess Jonathan might want to comment on the financial side. But in terms of mental health well-being, I think we've got a fundamental challenge here in that care workers often, they're putting other people first so often, they resist accepting help for their own mental health. And so we can see resistance in taking up some of those mental health digital supports for mental health, because care workers are like, no, I'm going to cope. And I think one way around that is for the manager themselves to open up a bit about, perhaps not in a broadcast as you said here, but open up a little bit about challenges they have, and then it's giving permission. So that's the sort of mental health space. I believe Headspace is used in the NHS. Not so familiar with what NHS are doing, but I think they're involved with Headspace. And Jonathan, you might want to comment on the kind of financial well-being and how that's grown up.
Yeah, I mean, mental health is so important. And this PwC survey recently said 54% of employees report that financial matters cause them the most stress. And that's particularly prevalent at the moment with the cost of living crisis. But just taking a step back and looking at these categories, Neil, 5 out of 6 of them are really about employee engagement. And that's so important. It's just listening, interacting, showing your carers that you care about them is really, really important. And Gallup also did a survey recently that reports that highly engaged teams see a 41% reduction in absenteeism and a 59% decrease in turnover. So it's just engaging somehow, and using digital tools is really, really a powerful way to do that.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating area to watch it develop. And you're absolutely right that mental health and finances are very tightly bound up. Absolutely. And then the other, kind of looking down the other categories, and I won't go through them slavishly each one, but the benefits to employees. Employers are often trying to find ways of finding meaningful benefits, and Care Friends actually its primary job, as I mentioned earlier, is to find great people to work with, which is where it fits with empowerment. Really, you choose who you work with. You can have a say in the recruitment process. You can be the recruiter. That's the idea of that sort of angle. But in terms of benefits, we didn't really have anything additional until the very first pilot we did back in 2018. And the provider said, this is great, everyone's referring their friends, but can I incentivize them to fill in their staff survey, which they never do? So we said, yeah, we can try that. So he sent a message out to everyone saying, look, you get 2 extra Care Friends points if you send your survey back. Please send your survey back by Friday. And he got almost all of them back. So that became a thing then that fits in with the app. And so benefits are really interesting. I think you have to look carefully to see, will your staff use them? And I would very much say your starting point should be asking your staff, like, is this something of interest? Always involving them, which I guess brings us on to the empowerment point. And there's some really cool tools. Obviously, Ian, you might want to mention how CoolCare fits in here. But before you do, just WorkBuzz is a great tool to engage staff surveying and so on. So I've seen them grow rapidly out from the care sector out into other sectors. But CoolCare as well has a role here, Ian.
Yeah, I think it's the concept of staff survey. I mean, you get feedback, and you think you're running a fantastic business, and then people saying, "Well, I'm not happy with this, I'm not happy with that." we ourselves do them. We use SurveyMonkey. That's why I popped that on there. And it throws up really interesting things. It's a staff satisfaction survey. You get feedback that you didn't know. You didn't know what you didn't know. CoolCare itself, the actual core product, doesn't have any functionality in that regard, but we have a peripheral that customers buy, which is called digital reception. If anybody's a PCS customer, you might recognize the name. It's the same system, and that's when you have a tablet at reception for people signing in. You might be thinking, what has this got to do with staff empowerment? Well, when the visitors are leaving, they leave feedback on the care delivery. You can have all your different elements that you want to sort of your metrics that you want to measure, but you can also switch it on to have a staff survey. So you don't necessarily, again, I haven't got a computer, I don't look at these things, I can't do it. It is possible to have an ad hoc staff survey with the tablet at reception. I would say, I'd argue, Care Friends far more effective. But if it's a customer that sort of doesn't want to go down that road at this current point in time, then it's just another way of doing it. And they'd be asking to do it in work time so that it's it doesn't get forgotten. And we do know that customers who do use that for a periodic staff survey find out information that is exceptionally helpful for running of their business, and their staff feel good because they're being listened to. There you
go. Yeah, very interesting. And I think the penultimate one here, productivity and efficiency, is probably been around the longest, I would say, and you might see that in terms of the improvement in systems for rostering and shift filling and so on. I mean, Sona's a good example.
I could bore everybody shitless with that one.
Absolutely. And
I mean, we are a productivity tool. So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think this is absolutely CoolCare's heartland. And I think what's happening here is it's a benefit for the employer, of course, but it's also a huge benefit for the employee because they're not spending the time filling in paper. And I think the whole ethos here is to try and remove administration and maximize contact time with residents. And software has made massive improvements in that. And I think also when you think now, I mean, a shocking amount of the working population is now millennials. And I think, I remember they were just coming in and now they're taking over. And the generations that follow them are their expectations are that what on earth are you asking me to do filling in stuff? So I think this is a really, really important area and an area that drives your whole operation. And if you consider that, going back to Ian's one of his very first points, that we are short of workers and we're going to continue to be short of workers, then increasing capacity, there's a couple of main ways of doing that. One way is to bring more people in who haven't worked in social care. And that's, I would argue, one of the objectives of Care Friends with the New to Care bonus is encouraging new people in and not moving people from different care homes to another one. But it's also about efficiency and productivity, and not can we sweat our staff more, but can we free them up, give them the maximum amount of contact time, which benefits the quality of care delivered. And it's just a huge area, which I think I would say has seen the most consistent, significant advances over the last few years. You'd probably agree, Ian, would you?
Yeah, certainly. I think I suppose if you just go back to the analog versus the digital. So if you said, well, how would you go about filling some shifts? So normally it's probably involving some either WhatsApp or some phone calls. Phone calls is a very traditional way, or a sign on the notice board. I remember speaking to a customer that had gone digital. This is quite a few years ago. Caught up with her 8 weeks after having her gone live, and she said, "Ian, I've not rung anybody for 6 weeks." So that's nice. She goes, "No, you don't understand. I've not rung anyone for 6 weeks." I was like, "All right, well, so what does that mean then?" I mean, she said, 2 hours a day trying to fill shifts. You give 2 hours. I was like, well, every day? Yeah, every day. So you got 10 hours back a week. Yeah. I was like, wow, that's it. That's really what we're talking about, productivity. I think it's interesting for demographic. You're mentioning about millennials. Also sort of younger than millennial sort of generations favor using apps and systems in order to volunteer for shifts. They actually prefer not to speak to managers directly. And we've got a case study on our website from St. Martin's Care, and he mentions about how the student nurses would do term time, non-term time, working not, so they would max out. They would take up as many shifts as they possibly get. and it was an issue before they had the system, because they'd go to the managers, oh, what do you want all these shifts for? Why are you doing this? Why, you know, question, which made them feel uncomfortable. But you can just say, you can just apply for these shifts, and the manager will not give them all to one person. They'll sort of allocate them out and spread them out evenly. But it's a way in which you can kind of pre-offer yourself, all from the comfort of your home, without having to kind of go cap in hand to managers, or, you know, have any conversations that they didn't want to have. So yeah, I think there's no end of productivity benefits from systems, and then you get the benefits of, I have now more time as a manager to speak to my staff. Staff are feeling that they're being listened to. I asked for a holiday, it's still 3 weeks, I've not had an answer, versus I got the answer within about 10 minutes. And then I'll literally just book it right now. And I think that speed of efficiency is essential. I think also, just an observation, is that there are many systems out there, but they're not all care specific. So they're what we'd call a generic, and the differences with care are kind of leading into what Neil was saying there, is that not sweating your staff, but maybe getting the most out of your staff. So as built into CoolCare and built into the L&T care home model, is staff can have multiple job roles and can be paid multiple different rates when they do that job role, and they can do different job roles in different care homes. So you can have one member of staff could potentially cover many different types of shifts. And so you're not having to go to agency for care home number one, because you've got somebody in this home is willing to travel. Now, it might be that you automatically pay them a little bit more money because they are traveling. But depending on your agency rates, you know, depending on your premium, so, you know, time plus a third, time plus, I've heard, up to 60% for just a standard carer. Anything in there you could potentially pay as a sort of an additional bonus for going out of your way to a thing, means that you're not necessarily using agency. You know, you're using your pool of staff in a more efficient manner, and you don't tend to see that kind of behavior in different sectors, and therefore non-care specific systems don't always allow that to happen. It's just that just doesn't happen. If that makes sense. You know, in retail, you know, you might go to a different store, but you're not necessarily doing a different job in a different store, if that's making sense.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting area. And I guess the final one I picked on was training. And training is so important, because if you think in the care sector, we really struggle to pay as much as we would like to pay. And really, we have to, coming back to what Skills for Care were quite rightly saying, is we need to build a culture where people love coming anyway if they've got the right values. They accept, you know, we can't match wages necessarily as easily as the private sector substitute employment, but we can, you know, it's the right job for you, but we have a duty to train people. And Skills for Care have seen that the more instances of training that are given, the more likely people are to stay. And I think this is particularly true of younger people who are coming in to the care sector, often with a view that it's a part-time, oh, I'll just do this for a short period of time. And some do stay. We know the ones that stay often have brother or sister with a disability, or cared for mum or dad, or they're more emotionally mature perhaps than the average younger person. But equally, you know, we have a duty to train them. And if you look across Europe, there's much more sophisticated training, much more coordinated training offers than perhaps we've had in this country. And I think a good example of that is that the most common job title is not care worker in Europe, it's an auxiliary nurse. So there's always that acceptance that, you know, you're going to move on a bigger pathway, and you have choices. You don't necessarily will have to become a nurse, but there is a very clear supported pathway. And I think there's a lot of work. DHSC are doing a lot of work now on career pathways right now, but it's good to see a lot of technology support coming in. And bite-sized training is often what people want. You know, is not a huge course. It's people would want to just nibble, if you like, at getting some content, maybe earning a digital badge, something like that.
Yeah, and I popped CoolCare in there because we do have a full training matrix, but it's very much about how it interacts with the rota. So this actually swings back to productivity and efficiency in the respect of, you've got training courses that people need to do. Our system is able to hold everything that they need to do, and you can see whether they've passed it or not, done it or not. So we're not talking about e-learning here that you do out of the home, anything that interacts with the rota. So So you're putting on a course and you have a number of attendees that are working that day or not working that day, you can basically put it into their schedule in their staff portal so they can see when they're working. Again, just it's all about kind of reducing friction, making everything easier to see, understand what's happening, and that's why a pop does in there as well, as it's we have a full training matrix, and we around about 60% of our customers use that area. Some use different systems, but it's definitely highly valuable. And of course, CQC love to see that you're delivering good training on a regular basis. So yeah, so as we can see there, I suppose overall from a tech to support retention, there's a lot of choices. And as Neil did say, you could add another, you could probably double, if not triple, each of the logos below each of those categories. And there are lots of choices. I think personally, the care specific ones have care specific considerations versus the generics. But sometimes the fact that it is generic has no bearing on the the effectiveness of the system. Jonathan's going to tell us a little bit about FlexEarn. Now, care is part of your portfolio, but it's not the only type of sectors. So tell us a little bit about kind of what you get up to.
Sure. We actually specialize in care. Most of our customers are in the care sector. To me, our carers do their job because they genuinely do care for others. And I know a lot of care workers, I speak to them regularly. And what's really important for them is that their employer also cares for them. And how can they do that? What's the one issue affecting every single carer? And all of us, in fact, it's the cost of living crisis. And over the past 2 years, food prices are up 24%. So it's just accumulated. And while inflation has gone down, that doesn't mean prices are going down. Prices are still going up, but just slightly slower. And over the same period, minimum wage is only up 17%. So, at the margin, that's really, really hurting people who have very sort of limited disposable incomes. And FlexEarn isn't the only way to improve financial well-being, by the way. I'd urge you to have a look at Step Change, the debt charity and our partner, but they've got loads of ideas for both digital and non-digital ways to help improve people's financial well-being. But back to FlexEarn, knowing there's a safety net there in case of emergencies is really, really critical for frontline workers. So what FlexEarn does is it allows you to access your money that you've already earned, whenever you need it. The alternative is to have an embarrassing conversation with your boss asking for a salary advance, which very few people do. And when they do, it's admin for them, admin for the company. Or worse, they go to exploitative forms of debt like payday loans, loan sharks, which are you wouldn't believe it, they're rampant at the moment. So yeah, if we could go to the next slide. I'll talk a little bit about how it works.
Actually, just for you on we met a customer about a year ago. I don't know if I ever told you this, Jonathan, but we talked about FlexEarn, and the woman was kind of like really seemed very agitated, and she says we do cash advances at the moment for our staff, but we really want to stop doing it. It's a lot of admin and it's costing us a fortune. And my sales team member said, what do you mean it's costing a fortune? He said, oh yeah, it's like £10 a transaction, because we do like an instant bank transfer, but we don't feel that a staff member should have to pay that, so we pay it. He's like, oh right, how many do you a month? Probably about 20 to 25. Oh, and they are a customer of yours now, but it's kind of like just £250 I just don't spend anymore. Which and the admin's disappeared as well. So it's kind of people do, you didn't invent the concept of a cash advance,
No.
but yeah.
It's a good point. And I think one of our first customers, we said, so how do you do your salary advances now? And they said, well, we've got a whiteboard. And they literally had a list of IOUs. And one day someone walked past the whiteboard and wiped it. And they were completely lost. They didn't know what they were doing.
There's a rebel in the team there. I love that. That's fantastic. Wipe out all debt. It's very, very Fight Club.
Yeah.
Cool.
So how does it work? Joe here is in the queue at Tesco. he's spent a bit more than he would have usually this month and realizes he's got no cash. He can't pay for his shopping. It's actually his first week in his new job and he gets paid in arrears. So he's got to wait 6 weeks to get paid, which is a significant amount of time. So how's he going to pay for his shopping? Well, he logs into the FlexEarn app, has a look. You can view his shifts. He can see he's worked 5 shifts, 4 have been approved. So he withdraws 150 quid to pay for his bi-weekly shopping. So this means FlexEarn pays that amount directly into his bank account. It hits instantly within 1.5 seconds. And he's fine. At the end of the month, £151.75, that includes our £1.75 fee, gets automatically deducted from his salary. And then it gets automatically repaid to us by the company via direct debit. The beauty of that is, we don't have any risk that he's not going to pay us back because the company is paying us back. So we don't charge any interest or anything like that. It's just the £1.75. So there's a few companies that offer a similar service to FlexEarn. Just a few important things to note when choosing your provider. So FlexEarn doesn't have any other sources of revenue. It's just those £1.75. So a lot of companies will say they only offer the earned wage access and then introduce other things. And so just be careful of that. Some providers take over your entire payroll. And then the way they get reimbursed is via an intercept of each employee's payroll. It's a bit more complex to set up. There are advantages and disadvantages to the intercept model over our deduction model. But feel free to reach out to me and ask me for advice if you're thinking about which system to use. FlexEarn is completely free for companies. So we just charge that £1.75 fee. But there's a variety of differences with the different providers.
It's worth mentioning it's technically free for the employee to have it if they want it. They can sign up to it and there's no ongoing charge or sign up fee or anything like that. It just sits there quietly until they want to use it.
Yeah, most employees actually just use our app for free just to view their shifts, see when they're approved, nag their manager if they're not approved, or chat to Step Change through our app, again, for free. We've got tools and articles. They don't have to use the cash out feature, although it's nice to know that's there for emergencies. Even if they never use it, it improves their financial well-being just by having it.
Makes sense. What kind of common objections do you get? What would people sort of say? For example, it's like we do cash advances already. It's no problem. We don't need a computer system to do that. We're absolutely fine. Thanks very much. What other kind of things you might hear?
Yeah, so by far the most common objection is it hard to set up? That must be really hard to set up. The answer is because of you guys. Thank you, Ian. And our very neat integration, which has been going for, I think, 2 or 3 years now. We've got dozens of customers using it. Because of that integration, it takes less than half an hour to set up. So we do it on the phone with you, and you're up and running. So there's literally nothing to do, nothing to maintain. It's all automated from then on. So that's the most common.
And you can do different categories of staff as well. You can offer FlexEarn to the care staff, but not the head office staff, for example.
Mm-hmm. So most of the care staff are hourly paid, and most of the head office staff are salaried. So we cover both, and all different pay types as well, including holiday pay and things like that.
So I've got a couple of objections that people say to me sometimes, which I have the answer to, but I thought it'd be interesting to hear it from you. Is they just get into a debt cycle. They'll just keep having to use it every single month. So no.
No, well, we don't think that's the case. Actually, we've done a lot of research on this, and actually, what we see is people who withdraw more frequently actually smooth their income. And I'm a perfect example. As a graduate, I wasn't earning very much money, but it was all paid in one lump sum at the end of the following month, I think. And I would, live like P. Diddy for 3 days. And then have no money left at the end of the month and have to pawn my laptop or whatever. But actually, if you smooth your income, it's a good way of smoothing your consumption as well. It just encourages smoother spending. And of course, not all of our expenses pop up when we get paid at the end of the month. They can pop up anytime, especially emergencies. And it's just good to have something there.
Yeah.
And of course, as a company, you can limit the amount people can withdraw, so they still have plenty left at the end of the month.
Yeah, and I think that's it's I think worth just reiterating. You are able to draw down a percentage of what you've earned, not what you will earn. So there is not the scenario where a staff member could actually have money that they've not earned yet and then leave. And then, we've got to try and recover that. It's not actually possible with your
Exactly right. Yeah.
setup.
It's only money that you've earned. And actually, until the 1960s, people used to get paid weekly. And it was only the Payment of Wages Act, I think, that changed that. And everyone switched to monthly, which is quite unusual. In the States, they pay bi-weekly generally. So using flex earn as a way just to smooth those earnings and allow for bumpy incomes, bumpy expenses is quite handy.
I've got another objection that I had, but I actually have the answer to it myself. But it came from a consultancy firm that works with multiple providers of this type, and it happened to be the Care Show. The company that we're working with said, "We're a charity, so we feel really uncomfortable about our staff being charged for something. So we'll pay the £1.50." And I went, "You sure?" And they went, "Yeah, we're a charity, we'll do that." And so they left, and then I'm chatting later on to this consultancy firm, there's care sector experts, and I said, "Oh, I've got charities talking about paying." He went, "Oh, don't let them. Tell them not to. I'll tell you what's going to happen." We had exactly the same situation. The charity's paying £1.50, and then the staff, because they weren't paying the 150, 170, just went £10, £10, £10, £10, and the bill was huge. And it's like, well, that kind of defeated the purpose of it. So yeah, the 170, I think 175 is such a small amount of money for early access. It's not credit. It's not a Wonga loan. And actually, if you're at a petrol station, you're trying to take money out, you probably get charged more, and you can't take money out that isn't on your balance already. So our feedback from our customers is extremely positive. That consultancy again had a bit of macro data, and they were saying that staff who have earned wage access are 80% more likely to pick up additional shifts mid-month in order to kind of make good the bit they took out, really. So I think that's a great example. And then finally, for those customers that do have a weekly pay period, we have seen kind of like the idea of using FlexEarn to change that. So, go from weekly to monthly, but allow you to access money mid-month and, sort of smooth before you're up to that point, because it's terribly inconvenient for the organization to be running payroll weekly. It's more expensive and more complicated. Whereas if you can run it on a less frequent basis, and you can use something to maybe bridge the gap. I think
exactly right. Yeah,
another great use there as well.
Yeah, a lot of these care organizations have consolidated, and they've taken on other ones that perhaps have different pay cycles. Maybe they're monthly, but the one they've acquired is bi-weekly. And they have to find where, if they want to switch from bi-weekly or weekly to monthly, they have to mitigate the effect of that on their carers. And one way of doing that is with FlexEarn.
Great, that's excellent, thank you. So Care Friends, Neil, tell us a little bit about kind of how it all works and what's the benefits.
Well, I mean, it's yes, it's been a journey, and the trigger for this, as I mentioned, was trying to understand which sources of recruitment should we be using in the care sector and that we don't. And I think we over rely on internet job boards. They definitely have a role, but active job seekers are a small percentage of the local community population. We've already talked about international recruits who are wonderful, but it's a very political environment in order to bring them in or not bring them in. And really, the future is with what I would call hyper-local recruitment, and that is finding people in the very local community who have those values you seek, have either a connection with the company, and the primary connection is a connection with your employees, which is why employee referral has been powerful since the Roman times, and using technology to remove the friction from that process. So that's been the journey we've been on with the Care Friends app. So the care workers have an app. You can see in that newspaper clipping, they have the app there, and the app takes on the colors of their corporation, so people feel that they belong to them. In this case, purple, up in County Durham for that care provider. And you can see on the map where we've the pins on the map. There's about 2,300. Apologies if you're in Scotland, I chopped you off, but there are dots in Scotland. There are dots in Australia and in Ireland as well for the app. And we started in one site in North Hampshire, sort of Surrey area, and then we did a pilot with EU funding. And the younger members of the audience might want to Google what the EU is. It was something we were part of. We got some EU funding to do a pilot in Cornwall, which is often a very stressed area for both recruitment and retention because of the tourism industry and all sorts of other factors. And then it's spread across the country, as you can see. And we're constantly refining it, and it has a gamification features like leaderboards, and you're earning points, and you get points instantly, and you get points as your candidate travels through the recruitment process, so that you don't have to wait 6 months for a payment when the company might be paying internet job boards immediately for no guarantee of anything. It seemed a shame to make the staff have to wait for someone they've sort of put their neck on the line to recommend this job would be great for you. So that's the sort of the kind of the backstory of it. And really the app is something that we've worked on with care workers to make it as simple to use as possible and fun and engaging. And we continue on that journey. And the opportunities to earn are not only employee referral, as I mentioned, but also you can earn bonus points from your employer for good work, achievements, or we can monetize picking up shifts. We don't have the software that CoolCare does, but we just simply offer incentives if the employer chooses to encourage more people in the organization to become a bank staff effectively, rather than, as you mentioned, Ian, people phoning all the time the same person and bullying them into helping out. So that's the kind of where Care Friends is at the moment. And then actually we should hop to the next slide, so I'm conscious of time as well. One of the key benefits to this is about retention, which is the topic here. And that is that employee referrals are more likely to stay. They're more likely to stay because they are handpicked for their values, they're local, they understand the work, they've had myth busting from the your existing member of staff, but also when they join, they've got a buddy or a peer mentor, and they're far more likely to be high performers. And if you look at this chart, I've color coded it in the sort of traffic light colors, just to give you a flavor. These are averages that we're seeing. And we're measuring here first 12 weeks employment, first 90 days. And if you look at retention, really our problems in social care are clustered in that first 3 months of employment. And really, the more you can do to improve things in the first 3 months, then you get a much better result overall. And you can see at the top, as you might expect, sponsored workers within the restrictions of a license are far more likely to stay with you. They're not all going to stay. And if you have or are exploring bringing someone in from overseas, then I would suggest that you should ask if they have family members or friends and where are they in the country, because they tend to ultimately gravitate towards those people. So if it's not in your area, there is a bit of a pull for them to move on. That's why we don't see that at 0 for the first 12 weeks. So there is a little bit of dropout, but sponsored workers, of course, as you might expect, are much more likely to stay. And if you look at then outside of them and more into the local community, returners, people who worked for you and you ask them to come back, are really good. Often there aren't many of them, but they are really worth asking. People, good leavers who you've left, say, how are you getting on? Would love you to come back. And that is a nice trickle of people that are going to come back and stay. Not all, but most. Employee referrals, I mentioned, really good for long-term retention. And then if you move outside of that, the sort of word of mouth, local advertising, local word of mouth, partnerships in the community are solid as well. There's a connection there, not as strong as an employee connection, but a connection with the company or a connection with care. And that's why we would see that being pretty good. Programmatic advertising is actually pretty good, but it's very expensive. So if you're not familiar with what programmatic is, its most obvious form is Google Ads, Google AdWords, where you understand, or Google does, so much about the person that is surfing. They present ads as an auction that happens in a millisecond. And if you said, well, I'm looking for someone who's got family care experience or is a care worker already, I can serve up an ad to say, come and work with us. It's quite hard work for employers to run that, but the results are good. It's just expensive cost per hire. And then social media, and particularly job boards, there's much more of a churn in the first few weeks. We would expect much less job attachment and connection with care. So that's just a flavor to show you how the source of recruitment can define an awful lot of retention. And once you've got those people, of course, you want to be adding those benefits in, like Flex Earn, and have a system like CoolCare and so on, as we've talked about. So yeah, really, that's what I wanted to kind of cover on that. And I know we've only got a few minutes left, Ian. So I don't know if you want to move.
That's very helpful. I think it's also, the employee referrals. You're getting new staff members, but the people who did the referral also become a little bit more embedded in the business themselves because they've made the conscious choice to invite that person, and
Absolutely.
they've got an incentive for it. So they've maybe had some little bit of money for the whole process. That makes them feel even more comfortable. So it's kind of like it does have a double win there.
Absolutely, and you can also share not only directly with people through typically WhatsApp or texting or an email, but you can post on Facebook saying, "Come and work with me at this company," and come and work with me at Ideal Care Homes, and that is a great employer brand. It's better than the employer saying, "Urgently required care assistance." It's much more compelling to the local community to see, oh, this person is saying this is a great place to work, and I think, yeah, there's that aspect of a very popular thing now, employer branding.
Very cool, very cool, very interesting. So just so I sort of ticked off how we did against our little list of key factors of retention. I think from a helping with freeing up manager time, I think all of these systems are very helpful. Less signing off, less paperwork, less admin, etc. It does. CoolCare is obviously going to help with the sort of workforce planning, comms, cover some shifts, care friends could potentially incentivize people to also do that, as well as just increasing salary when they're doing it. So it's going to get points for that. Skip the middle ones. Promoting career development. Yeah, absolutely. I think you are sort of advocating joining this company for a good reason. And then, yeah, we can definitely support that way. Positive benefits, terms and conditions, staff well-being, and rewards and recognition, very much covered against the sort of both Flex Earn and Care Friends in that regard. So I think systems can certainly help in these areas. It is not the be all and end all. It's not got I bought myself a computer system I don't have to manage anymore. It's not like that. But we're definitely in a better place. So closing remarks. I think overall we've got it is a positive market. There is an increasing demand for care and care homes. Staff retention continues to be an issue across the sector. That doesn't really change. That rough third, 29%, stays pretty constant. And the top up from somewhere else, if you like, from visas, is not really an option anymore. Employee engagement has never ended to be an incredibly important thing. Digital solutions are there. They can make a difference. We've given some key examples of how they've helped staff. There are lots of choices out there. Choice is very, very important. It's got to be easy to use. I would argue that it should, care-specific systems, people who understand the care sector, you're going to get some subtle but important advantages that you wouldn't from a generic. And yeah, we definitely know that ease of use and that kind of thing is important, because we know that from our own customer data, 80% of our customers, which, bear in mind, that's 55,000 beds, does not report any use of agency at all. So they use all of the tools at their disposal to avoid having to use agency. And that's it. So we've got a minute left. See if there's any questions from anyone. We've got a little question thing. So you can actually ask questions on your sort of tool Q&A button. If there are no questions, then you can go to these websites to find out a bit more. We will be sending out a recording of this video. And so anything that you need to sort of find out, you can kind of respond to that email. We're doing our next webinar in July, which is called Fun with VAT. You'll get a link to that too, all about VAT planning. I tried to make it as interesting as possible. It is VAT, but it can actually save, if not tens, it could hundreds and even millions of pounds in a care business, which is not normally registered for VAT. So it's certainly a very interesting subject. And we've got Kieran Lynch, the consultancy, to help us with that. We'll be at a few shows if you want to come see us. But if there are no questions, I shall call it at that. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you very much, Neil.
Thank you very much. So, nice to meet you.
Thanks very much.